Hey everybody, my name is Matt Pierce. I'm the Learning and Video Ambassador for TechSmith. I'm glad you're here with us today. We've got a great show planned for you. Can't wait to get into that. But as we like to get things kicked off here, of course, one of the things that we'd like to talk about with everybody is just that, we've got this thing called the TechSmith Academy. And the TechSmith Academy is our free online learning platform that you can go learn about script writing, storyboarding, lighting your videos. You can go learn about getting started, how to be better on camera. We just launched this last week a new course, Basics of Screen Recording. They're going to walk you through start to finish about screen recording. If you've never done screen recording, it's a great primer. It's not about Camtasia. I just want to be clear. You can go learn Camtasia from our tutorials or the certification program or other great sources. This is really about those fundamentals of what you need to do to plan, prepare, and execute. There's obviously some Camtasia references in it, but we'd love to have you check that out again at TechSmith Academy, and it is free. So with that said, I want to get to today's show because we've got some great stuff. Today we're going to be talking with Alexander Salas. He is a award-winning learning experience designer, and some of you might know him as the chief of Awesomeness, which he is, I can guarantee, at elearninglaunch.com. He's got a whole bunch of credentials that give him like these really nice acronyms after his name: CPDT, Comp, TIA, CTT plus. I mean, it goes on and on. He is he is knowledgeable about many things. He is especially knowledgeable about learning. One of the things I noticed about Alex is, he's one of the folks out there from learning and development that are fighting against bad practices in the industry. He's out there encouraging people to get better, helping them to skill up. So he's not just, someone that knows stuff. He's out there actively practicing and doing. And with that said, I want to welcome Alex to the Visual Lounge. Say, welcome.
Wow. That's an intro, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, you deserve it. I've watched your work for a long time, and I'm really excited that I think we met at a conference one time, but I'm really excited just to have a chance to sit and talk with you and learn. And because today's topic is really, I think, exciting. It's about taking time to learn, which I think as learning professionals, we're not good at.
It's true. Where, I come from, my background is medical in the Navy. And we usually used to say, nurses are the worst patients, so the same people in medical are the worst patients because we think we know everything, and so we know how it works. So the
Yeah.
same thing, I think I see it in learning and development, where it's like, eh, we don't have enough time type of thing. So yeah, we're definitely got to take some time for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned a little bit of your background. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit more about yourself, just so we get to know you just a little bit?
Sure. So, I'm a Navy vet. I was what they call a hospital corpsman in the Navy, and I was attached to Marine Corps units. And that's actually how my whole career started, because I was helping people study for their exams, for their promotion exams. And that kind of got a little spark, started getting a little bit of that dopamine with the aha moments, right? Where people like, oh, thank you so much. I made it because of you, that type of thing, right? And so from there, you're like, I think I like this. I really like teaching, helping people out, stuff like that. And then I started finding out that there was actually a career, there was a profession that did this for businesses. And that's, I went to get some degrees and stuff like that. And being the good military person that I am, looking at regulation, going like, wait a minute. So what's the degree I need to get? What do I need to do? And little did I know that, half of what more than half of what I've done in my career had nothing to do with a degree. But but here we are.
Yeah, I think it's a very familiar story. I think a lot of people that do learning development find they like my own story, right? I thought maybe I'd be a teacher, and I was like, I don't really want to, maybe at community college level or whatever. Then I use those same words. I found out people get like paid to do this. Like there's a job you can do that helps you have those same types of experiences. So, and as you've learned, I'm sure you're always learning stuff. Do you feel like there are skills that and we talk to a lot of people in L&D, but technical writers, are there kind of key skills you feel like that are missing in today's kind of workforce, or I don't want to say broad workforce, but for learning development people that they need to have to be relevant today?
Yeah, the field has definitely kind of expanded. There's many different things to do, but the same problems are there. So E-learning was revolutionizing things 21 years ago. So we're still revolutionizing today. So and video really, it's an interesting thing. Once you look at the history, you'll find yourself like going, like, what happened here? So like, we used to use film back in the 50s, and that was the primary method for a lot of big organizations. And then that went away, and it went more to be face to face. So it's skills today. I would say, a lot of people have to develop creativity and then ways to actually express that creativity. So that's the challenge there. So those skills to develop, to express that creativity with a good sense of quality, right? Because otherwise we end up with a lot of like, clip art, stuff like that. And, so.
We go back to the bad PowerPoint bullets and clip arts, right?
Clip art and, the doughboys, I call them the doughboys, but I put a post on that and it went crazy on LinkedIn. It's like, don't do that. Like, guys, they got no pants, they got no shirt, they got no identity.
Yeah.
And they're all like, teamwork.
Got some pose going on, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I would guess that many people default to those types of things because it's easy. And I would say, like, learning to be more creative or learning to express ideas through visuals, it takes work. So I want to dive down this a little bit because I think it's could be an interesting conversation. Is like, so how does someone, like, if they're trying to make it better, they're trying to avoid the doughboy or the clip art, like, how does someone start to gain creativity? So we can talk about time in a second, having the time to do it, but like, is there a process? Is that something that you feel like can actually be taught or learned?
Yeah, I think so. I think the first thing you have to do is, I think that, well, that's a saying that says, the best form of flattery is imitation, right? Like imitating something. So I think that will be the main thing, is to imitate something that you see out there that is freaking awesome, right? So if you see, if I see you do some video and that video is awesome, high quality stuff, I want to be like, okay, how did Matt do that? Let me find out what's going on here, and then try to do that. And then as you start gaining those skills, then you'll start seeing applications of that somewhere else in different designs. At least that's been my approach. And I found out this morning that neuroscience backs it up.
Oh, really? Enlighten us. What did you learn? Because I'm super curious about that.
Yeah, so one of the big habits I have is, if I can't sleep or I get up early in the morning, I grab my phone, I go to YouTube, and I start turning on whatever big talks are there on health and hacks and stuff like that, and you just walk and listen to those things. So there's interesting research on this guy. I think his name is Uberman, but don't quote me on it. You'll find it on either Health Theory or Impact Theory, one of those two shows. Tom Bilyeu had him as a guest. And so he mentioned it's interesting that we do get this dopamine rush, right? But the dopamine rush of us learning is actually the pursuit of the goal, not so much the achievement of the goal. So you get an incremental hit when you're in the pursuit of it. When you're like, okay, I got to figure out let's go back to my example, right? I got to figure out what Matt did there. What was that, a layout? What did he do? Camtasia or something? Either an animation? What was that? And so that pursuit, if you incrementally start hitting that, you start getting this hit to dopamine, and you're reinforcing neural networks in your brain. They kind of take you down that road of like, going back to 1908 or something, 1918, you had Thorndike giving us the law of effect, right? Which basically just says that we repeat the things that we like to do, that we have a good experience with. So if you do those things, I think, today a lot of people talk about neuroscience and stuff like that, but basically what I think neuroscience is doing is validating physiologically what a lot of people told us many years ago.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so there's a couple thoughts there to unpack. I think one, I love this idea, and I've said it on the live stream before, I think with Tim Slade, that like, the mantra, great artists, good artists copy, great artists steal. Picasso said that, Steve Jobs quoted him and took it as his own, which is appropriate, right? And I've always thought about that, because even I know my son, he's doing some college classes right now, and he's doing a class, it's a writing class, a personal narrative, and he had to draw. He's like, Dad, I can't draw. And I'm like, yes, you can. Anyone can draw. I'm like, but there's that process of like, he can learn to do steps. And the first thing I said to him is like, get a picture you want and then trace it. You don't have to use that picture, but trace it. Like do this work. So I think there's something really to that, taking that other work and modifying it. And really, if you look over the internet, it used to be that, I don't remember what the style was, but right now everything is animated, not animated, but like these figures. They're not stick figures, but they're kind of narrow, flowing, and every tech company is using them now.
Yeah.
Why? Because they must work and they're stealing from each other. And then from the dopamine hit, like, yeah, of course, it makes sense. You're doing something you like, and if you like, boy, man, think about the benefits. If you like learning, you can continue to learn, which really leads me to the question, Alex, of, I think most people would say, of course, it's important to learn new skills, gain new abilities, in the field, or, in whatever you're doing. For you, how do you make sure you're taking the appropriate time to do that versus just like, I think I often like, oh, I'm going to do that, and I put it off a lot because it's hard to get going, or just, I know it's going to take time. So how do you make sure that you're doing that for yourself? And then what advice would you give us to be better at that?
Yeah. So, I don't know. With me, it's been, I kind of learned to embrace the suck, as they say, right? So,
Love it.
I think that's an important part of it, because a lot of people will give up immediately. So they'll do something, they'll realize, oh, I'm not good at it, or it's too hard, then they'll give up. And that's also based on that conversation that I listened to, a podcast. It's also a problem because you're reinforcing that negative behavior now. So you're reinforcing your quitting behavior, and you're kind of making it a normal thing, telling the brain, hey, this is basically what happens. This is what we do. So, yeah, for my case, I have so many examples in life, and I'm not a spring chicken anymore, as you can tell. So in the Navy, for example, there was scheduled time, right, for training. There was at least 4 hours on a Thursday morning where everybody stopped doing what they were doing and got down to business. And there were also, communications within the team. Myself, then, from that practice, you'll find me Saturday morning just tinkering on something, always, So most people are sleeping, I'm doing that. And I always find it, for my case, I find it to be like it's almost like a competition thing, right? So, but it's not it may be a competition against you, it may be a competition against anybody else. And I'm saying, okay, I'm doing this. Whoever else is going to be doing something better, I bet you they're not. I bet you they're sleeping right now, and I'm doing it. Right? So that's kind of like the motivation thing. Not to, hurt anybody or anything, but just the mindset, kind of like what Michael Jordan used to do a lot, which was, you'll say something and he'll get really mad about that, and you're like, all right, you see, I'm gonna destroy you on the court, in his head. So it was getting that persistence, and that's, that when I listened to that this morning, it really clicked, because I was like, yeah, I do that all the time. That's why, okay, that makes sense now, because that's the thing, is like, what I tell people all the time is that, look, if you're going to be the person who's just going to go to work and expect that everything you're going to learn at work, you got problems. Because when things like this happen, when COVID, you don't really have a way to bounce. So you have to catch up. So I was happy, for example, when COVID happened, I actually started a business when COVID started. I left corporate America to start a business, and actually 2 businesses. So, by that process itself, by doing those things, I learned a lot of things. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes so much sense, right? Like that hustle mentality, and you hear a lot of that in the tech space, but it's like if you're going to get something done, you have to want it and you have to hustle for it. And I think, it seems like that's that's the challenge. It's not the learning that's maybe hard. It is the motivation to want to learn that's hard. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I can see that. I think it's also inaction is the biggest problem, right? So you have to act, you have to do something, and it's incremental. It's not it's also incremental. It's not. Don't think it is a, I'm going to sit here for 3 hours and do this. Your brain needs to. Interesting pieces they talk about is your brain needs to kind of, you don't learn anything in the beginning, basically. So when you, even if the main thing is interesting is you learn, technically speaking, you're learning when you sleep, right? So you strengthen those synapses when you sleep. And this guy was talking about that. It's like, you think you learn when you go to training or you do a class or something. You're not learning anything there. All you're doing is recording, and then your system goes when you sleep. It's gonna go and kind of edit, and go through everything there. I'm being a little bit on the nose because we're here.
Yeah, of course. And
Post production, and then
yeah, so it makes total sense, right? Like you're taking things in, you need to process it. It needs to get in, the proteins need to form in the brain to make sure that you're going to have retention. As you've been going, I'm curious that you've done a lot of things. You've worked for a lot of big companies. Your military experience. I'm sure all these things have been significant. Starting a company, I mean, like that's like 3 different kind of worlds to live in. And I'm curious about what's been the hardest thing for you to learn. And it could be from L&D kind of stuff. It could just be like, is there something that you've set out to you like, I wanted to learn X, but man, it was hard. I can tell you several things I've tried to learn unsuccessfully. But I'm curious for you.
Yeah, I wanted to learn. I think that I can think of was full stack development. So I wanted to be full stack developer. I have big bits and pieces of it. I can do JavaScript up front. I can do some SQL back end, but not the full gamut, including all the things. And I tried to learn that. I tried learning that through a Udacity type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like $1,000. We had a time, you had like a deadline or something. And yeah, I was doing it, but it still was a lot of, it just didn't translate sometimes. And it was complex to a point. So yeah, that gave me a little bit of challenges in that. And I and then life got very busy at that point since I was always doing some of the stuff. The problem, main thing also for me is that I'm always engaging with the community, right? So I'm always engaging. When I engage, it's not just a post. It's not just a little post on LinkedIn. Sometimes I'm doing video. I'm doing YouTube videos on my channel. And now I'm managing at one point I was managing 4 different YouTube channels. So now it's so,
You're not busy.
Yeah, no, not at all. Yeah, but busy and stuff that it's motivating me to do. So it's kind of like you get in that flow, the Sitchin me high flow, right? Because you're engaged, you're focused on what you do, and those are things you need to learn. If you're not engaged and you're not focused, you can't learn. So.
No, and I love that as a takeaway for anyone that's watching, right? Like if you're thinking about learning something new, whether it's a software development, a platform, how to do video, how to use a product, how to apply a theory. I mean, it feels like you've got that motivation has to be there to some degree, or you won't learn and it won't work.
Yeah, and you also have to get out of yourself, like get out of your head with a lot of the thoughts, because a lot of people will have thoughts of, well, why am I learning this? What am I getting out of this when I learn it?
Right.
They expect some kind of quick gratification when you learn something, and that's the thing. You can't think of those ways. You just got to think, okay, this is something that's relevant to you, that you really like, that you would like to do, that you see using, then act, go on it, start talking to people, whatever it is that works for you, because we don't all work at the same capacity or level. But there may be a thing of, I got people reaching out to me on LinkedIn all the time, like, hey, I know you do e-learning, can we talk for a minute, blah, blah, that everything, and I give them some time and we chat. So yeah, I'm not that guy. I don't usually reach out to people. I'm like, I'm gonna beat it. I'm gonna find out. I go to YouTube is awesome. YouTube is probably the best thing that ever happened because you can go. I know what I tell people is, look, it's like I think the critical skill you need to have is research. Know how to research stuff. Like look for stuff that really is good quality. Because in YouTube you're gonna go through like 30
Yeah.
pieces of garbage, and then you're gonna find that gem. And you're like, oh yeah, this is it. So
Yeah, it's amazing our world has been so much opened up. Like, learning how to do so many skills. I often with YouTube, it's easy to go to the home improvement because that's how I use it so much. But it's like those were skills that were traditionally passed down, uh, parents to children, and now it's like I don't know. I don't go ask my dad or my mom how to put in a new light switch. I go to YouTube and I find probably, like you said, 10 different videos until I find one that makes sense to me, is fitting my situation. And that's almost that ability to get customized there is so cool yeah, too bad there's not more videos about more things I'm interested in.
yeah, I know. So sometimes we get also, and it's because of the sources, right? So a lot of people always talk about, oh, informal learning. Informal learning is great. Informal learning is this. Well, the problem is, yeah, sort of. Like you can go read a blog, right? You can go talk to someone, but you have to be careful where you go because you're gonna get wrong information, and then now you have a problem because you're learning the wrong information, right? So you're going off the wrong information. So somebody's gonna tell you, hey, here's some learning styles. Why don't you design for learning styles or this and that? Or hey, why don't you why don't you do I don't know, the other ones, Dale's Cone or whatever. So those kind of things you got to be careful on where you get them from. So I usually say like, look, there's no excuse. Like we got like so much stuff you can find, and I still find people that don't go there. They don't search for things. They're waiting. And I don't know, I'm trying to think with you, like, I don't know, is that something that we are creating in Melody because we want to be so learner center that we kind of create spoon-fed people, and then the spoon-fed people don't look for things because they're
Yeah.
expecting Melody to give them the stuff?
I don't know. I mean, so I know from my experience with TechSmith, one of the things that we've been looking at is that we know most of our customers will start with Google. If they're looking for a Camtasia question or Snagit question, they start with Google. They don't, even though we put out a lot of content. We have lots of tutorials. We have lots of the academy, like the TechSmith Academy stuff. But most people start with Google that we found, and I think that's. But and now it's a lot because with working with marketers and understanding kind of how that Google search engine works. It's the game. Can you optimize your content over all the other content to appear first, regardless if it's really the best content? Now, look, everything I've worked on and the team I work with, they always try to put out the best content they can, like the most relevant, the most useful. But sometimes it's just the content that's ranking number one in that search engine or number two at the top is because they were really good at SEO. They hit all the right key terms based on how I'm searching, not that it is the ultimate like answer.
Of
So,
course.
so I don't know if it's about spoon fed or if it's just people, sometimes I think we don't want to take the time. Like I just want it to be easy because I don't really care about this thing. I just want to do it. And so if this fits my mental model of how I think things work, why not just go with it? It makes sense. Somebody said it was right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
not,
and then you have like three other people saying I agree, so now you're like, oh yeah, must be the thing. Ralph Koster, he wrote the book Fun Theory of Fun for game design. Because I'm like heavy into game design. I like to be heavy in. I'm a wannabe game designer, I guess. He mentioned that he mentioned that about users, and when you design games, like he basically says people are lazy. Like they want the easy button, they want the stuff like that. And that's the whole thing we're going back from the conversation. It's like you gotta learn in discomfort, right? You gotta get uncomfortable to learn. And
yeah.
that's a hard concept to get into people. It's like you have to get uncomfortable to learn. So when I do, let's say, a course or something like that, and I deliver a class, I used to say like, look, I'm gonna hit you this one night. This first night we're talking here, I'm gonna hit you. It's gonna be brain mush. Your brain's gonna be like, what? Like, yeah, I saw him do this, but what? You're gonna come back tomorrow, right? And what you need to do is watch a little bit of the video again before we meet again, and then we're gonna do something else. And I call that learning santeria. So you'll get a little bit of that mix of phrases. But once I think one this I was seeing the comments here, it says like so many resources gets overwhelming. Who do I follow? I tell you who I follow. I follow Google Scholar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I instead of doing Google, because Google, gets you anybody's and their mother, right? Like, somebody, Joe Blow, writes a blog and says, "Oh, learning styles are amazing," or he says something like, "Yeah, you should do video for everything," that type of thing.
Right.
Then then you're getting that, and that's what you're getting. So you go to Google Scholar, yeah, you're gonna get some papers, yeah, you're gonna get like academic papers, but you can kind of trace things from when they came from and what's happening. I mean, we're being sold a bunch of stuff in the industry. Like L&D is full of vendors creating stuff and then relabeling it a different way. And now you're like, what's going on? Right? Like, where is this guy? And people follow that. So, micro learning came from micro teaching, 1967, Stanford, right? And turned into micro training. But nobody talks about that. Addy was misrepresented as well. Nobody talks about that. And so that's some of the things I hidden kind of, and now people are chasing, or let's say, I don't know, doing the Inquisition on Bloom's taxonomy, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and it makes sense, right? Like I know I just read a recent paper by Richard Mayer about the five things to improve instructional video, right? And it's great because there's research to back it up. It's not just his opinion. I mean, I've got lots of opinions, but they're not worth really that much if they don't, they're not tested. And that's when the hardest thing about Google Scholars, if you don't have access to the paper, I found a really great article I wanted one time, and I just reached out to the professor, and he was traveling through Europe. And he's like, "I'll send it to you in a couple days when I get to a good hot spot," and he did.
Yeah.
I didn't have to pay for it, and I mean, I'm guessing there's a limit to that generosity, but it was awesome because it was a great paper, and I haven't been able to do much with it yet from a like how do I talk about it or whatever. But it's so valuable to know, like, okay, I've got this thing in my pocket that somebody studied something, and I can pull from. I do want to, Alex, real quick. We're a little bit later than I said I want to get to some questions. You answered the one, so thank you. There's another one here that I thought was kind of interesting. Yvonne, and she's over on Facebook, said she's asking how to engage people who don't really want to learn for themselves but are mandated to take courses, and you need to teach them. Obviously, we're talking a lot about if you're self-driven learning, but there's obviously in organizations, you got compliance training, you got these other types of training where it's like, we need you to understand and learn this. And sometimes people are not motivated to do that, like we talked about. And so what advice could you give to Yvonne about how do you help that group of people to move through the hurdles so that they do learn?
Yeah. So that's a tall order to discuss. It's a lot of context we need to know in order to really give like the awesome answer to that. But primarily, everything that we do in organizations, and that's my gig, helping organizations do something better and with e-learning or whatever else. Instructional science, period, or instructional science. I think you need to have like a good combo of three elements. I think that primarily, it's funny that we talk about this, but I mean, Gagne just basically, I think accidentally, not even on purpose, gave us sort of like the way to kind of address things, because when he came up with conditions of learning and eventually the nine events of instruction, it kind of comes down to that point. It's like, I got to grab your attention to begin with, right? So I have to have your attention, and then I have to make you understand the importance of what it is that you're going to face. So if you have as foundation some key concepts of theory, which are, you're dealing with adults, you're dealing with people that already have experience in their lives, and you're dealing with people that have a specific social role in life, right? They're not just going to take your course because you told them to take your course. They're going to take your course because there's some kind of value to it. And what the value is needs to be communicated. The problem is I hardly ever see anything communicating the value of whatever it is that is being done. Usually the schematic structure of, if it's in a learning course, is, title, learning objectives, which are poorly crafted, designed, and thought of. Just some kind of, out of nowhere notion of, oh, here's Bloom's taxonomy, describe, blah, 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 right? And then there's 10 bullet points that don't really mean anything, don't really say anything. It was great for the ID, maybe, if the ID was doing something that they knew what they were doing, they were using Dick and Carries, and they were aligning it to teach to the test. But here's the problem. If you're doing something in an organization where people need to do work, a test doesn't do anything.
Right.
Test doesn't solve business problems. A test solves academic problems, right?
Yep.
Hey, you're taking this course in the college. I want to know if you know what you need to know so you graduate. Here's your exam. Boom, you took the exam, awesome. Not only address the cognitive pieces, right? You are able to remember something. Doesn't mean that you're going to use it, utilize it, care about it, or even consider it to be part of life. So you have to be relevant to what you're doing. You have to be good in the aesthetics, right? Mm-hmm. Your design has to be good. Your design has to be visually appealing, because you can have something that's relevant, but if it looks like crap and you have a clip art on it and, and little clippy coming around, hey, it looks like you want to learn, so people are going to discount it right away. That's why Netflix doesn't look like Craigslist, right?
Right.
Right. So those are three elements, right? Aesthetics, relevance to what you're doing. Obviously, you have to have the front end purpose of it, but communication is the biggest piece of it. As a designer, that's what designers do, right? Regardless of the case, graphic, visual, whatever, industrial, we're communicating, we're expressing something, we're giving feedback to a user,
Right.
So if you're not doing feedback through your designs, and if you're treating it just an academic course, then that's the results you get, an academic performance.
Yeah, and I wonder No, this is good, and I wonder though, like some of these courses, because I've been in manufacturing environments where you had courses you had to take, they're compliance courses, and it was, but I wonder if it's how much of it's about actually learning something, and much more about like I've made you aware, and you can reference it as needed later, and that's like. It's different to learn, like you're not learning that procedure or learning that thing. Like I just went through our corporate, class on like harassment and discrimination and how,
right.
And I'm definitely I've learned things in there, but like there's a policy and they may, like, did you read the policy? I'm not trying to learn the policy. I just have to know how to find it when I need it. Like, and like, I just wonder if some of some of the learning that we try to force doesn't need to be learning. It needs to be like another way to present that. So
yeah, it's a performance-based situation, but even that is like, okay, is it important that you need to know where to find the policy? I mean, what are you going to do with the policy? Are you ever reading the policy? Compliance training is one of those little things where, I hear people saying, oh no, compliance training can be effective and fun. Look, compliance training is a very cut dry thing, right?
It is what it is.
Companies don't want to get lawsuits. So you need to prove that people took the training. Yeah. Doesn't mean that they want to know if, oh, wow, people are really, of course, it would be awesome if everybody just watch 1 hour or 2 hours of boring stuff for every year, once a year, and all of a sudden they change their behavior because that's what happened, so.
Right.
There's companies that do silly stuff too. They are allowed to be done, like IT, for example. They will send phishing emails, right, like the decoys or whatever, and not communicate that to anybody, right? So now you're losing the element of trust on people, right? Because now, what do? People ignore the behaviors. That's the thing, right? So what I have this team. This happened to me when I was working in one place. The team would actually just go around and say, and just warn you about it. Hey, I just got this email. It looked weird. I think it's a trap from IT. So that defeats the whole purpose of doing the thing, right? Because now this guy told 10 other people, hey, there's this email that came from this. Don't do it. So I'm never going to really perform on the real situation because there's always people interfering with what's happening.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's probably another question, Barbara. I will try to answer your question by the end of this. I want to take the time that we have with Alex. The question was, Matt, who do you follow? So I'll come back to that because I know, Alex, you have a hard stop later. I want to make sure we're respecting the time because there's really two big questions I have that I want to make sure we talk about. One is, and we sort of talked about this a little bit, but I want to see if we can encapsulate this into your tips for people to learn. Like, obviously you're doing a lot of teaching. And the second question we're going to talk about, I want to talk about e-learning launch because I think it's such a cool project, what you're doing. The work I've seen come out of it so far is awesome. But like, if you're to give people tips about taking time to learn, like top 3 tips, what would you tell people? What would you tell yourself? Like if you could go back in time and say like, hey, here's some things you need to learn or about learning, taking this time, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, I think, the more I keep looking at things and the more I keep experimenting as well in the way that I can learn better, it's there's an interesting thing, a couple of things of research that have been done, right? So oxygenation to the brain affects your capacity. So it's basically like all of us are running around with a 3.5-pound computer, right? And then some of us are running on a Commodore 64, and some of us are running a PlayStation 5, which hasn't been released yet. but what I would say is like that depends a lot on what you're doing with your life. So you're working out, you're oxygenating, you're walking out and getting sunlight. Those things play an element. So I've tried to do those, and then aside from the learning pieces, you got to think of this. We have that computer, it's communicating with our body, and we are always learning. Right? That's the key thing. You're always learning. You're always recording what's happening here. I'm learning things just from watching you deal with the chat and different things. Those are little things, little tidbits that I may remember later and go, oh, I'm going to use that. Or I like how he did that, right? So then there's the process of you intently learning some skill. And for that, I think there's some kind of formula you can think of, which is pretty similar to what happens when you want to lose weight or you want to work out and things like that, which is you need to have, time. What did they call that? What I had it was exposure plus frequency times interest over time. So, you have to create exposure against the thing that you want to learn. You're not going to learn it just by, it's kind of like what I say, like you buy a book, you got to read it,
Right.
Buying the book alone doesn't help you. So I got to tell myself that a lot of times. There's a ton of books in here I haven't read yet. So, but you have to expose yourself to the thing that you want to learn in action, not just in theory, not just talking about it, but actually in action. And then you have to be able to reflect on that. So the key thing, a lot of people say good things about, spacing it out, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the whole purpose. Remember how we said that, you don't learn when you do the thing, but you learn when you sleep? Well, you space things out. That's why when we do in the academy, I don't like, I've been fine-tuning it because we started with 2 hours of sessions, and I'm like, it needs to be less than that. Now it's less, and it looks ideal for Camtasia, right? So 90 minutes, boom, and then let's come back the next day, and now another 90 minutes, and now we keep communicating, but we're not, beating it down the front. We're doing something. We're actually building something. That's why you see the samples being built. So always, you have to be creating something as part of learning, and I think that's one of the great things that at least Bloom kind of touched on. When you look at the taxonomy, and then, as it was revised anyway, one of the highest levels in learning is creation. So you have to do something.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I think that's the thing that as I'm listening to you go through these, the points of like your brain doesn't really work well if the rest of you's not working well. And then this idea that the practice, right? Like you've got to apply, even if it's not a practical thing like learning Camtasia, you've got to apply those things. So I've probably mentioned this before, but my son went to Mexico at the end of September last year. Came home in April because of COVID, but like he went in knowing zero Spanish. Like he took a kind of typical like a high school or two, which he knew like 5 words. But now, I mean, he'll tell you he doesn't know as much as I think he really does, but he can converse. He can talk to lots of people. He's got friends that he talks to regularly. So it's super super interesting, right? But I can see it slipping over time, right? As longer he's home without that kind of constant exposure, he's not as confident, it's not as good. But that practice, and I say it on these shows all the time, like just every day get a little bit better. And I love that you're applying that approach. So with that, tell us about e-learning launch, because I think it's a cool concept. Tell us, how'd you get started and really what is it?
Well, so it began, I started with a good friend of mine, Aaron King, and that was an idea that I flipped over and I said, look, there's a problem right now that we have in the industry. One is we got people that don't have any experience and they're acting as coaches or acting as, want to help you become an instructional designer. And you can tell by looking at the profile, they haven't really done anything. So that's a problem because a lot of people now want to be in the field, instructional design and everything else. On the second piece, then academia is running their own little path. They're on their own parallel path. They're not providing what employers are needing. So employers want, unrealistic things, but they're also things that are business based, which is saying, why am I going to pay somebody to do video? And why am I going to pay somebody to do After Effects? And why am I going to pay somebody to do instructional design when I can have one salary and have a person that can do some of that, right? Now, we can get into all ethical discussions about, well, that's not fair, but that's just the way the world is right now. So you go to a college, you get a master's degree. That's what a lot of people are doing, right? They're thinking, I'm going to get a master's degree and then I'm going to get a job.
Right.
And then they get out and they can talk theory all day. They can write a paper, but that's not what the employer needs, right? So the employer needs to say, hey, yeah, great. What is your portfolio? Hey, what kind of work you done, right? And people are like, portfolio? What are you talking about? And so, there are some programs that are making people do this, but they're also doing it with the wrong tools. That's the other part, right? So nothing contemporary. The stuff they're making looks very amateurish, very, so it puts them at a disadvantage to begin with. So the academy has that purpose. The academy has that purpose of closing that gap, of giving people an option whether, you don't have to, you can go to college and still reinforce. We got a lot of people that are students, that are actually master students, and they're graduating soon, but they're hitting this and they're gaining skills. And the cool thing about it, I think that made me the happiest about it is we're helping people get the skills real quick. It's not, we're talking, I do a 4-week cohort and people are coming out. You saw some of the videos that came out of the Camtasia stuff, right? So, they're not Academy Award winner stuff, but it's better than whatever you see some people putting out there that say they have been doing it for years. So, right. And I get impressed with a lot of the work that people do. So that's basically what happens. You get, there are self-paced courses and cohorts, which are live, and you get one-on-one feedback with the instructors. So you get me through the system where you actually don't take any quizzes. You develop assignments, you develop work. And ideally, if you're smart about it, you're developing work samples that will go in your portfolio. And so I'm looking at your designs and I'm telling you, you may want to do that again. And if it's too bad, I may actually record myself on video and say, all right, let's talk about this. You see here, right. This yeah, you don't want to do that. You want to do this, you want to do that. And then people go, oh man, that was great. And then, when they come back, the change or the with the feedback, the amazing progress is like 100,000%. So that's been fantastic, and that's the difference. The difference is it's not just a course dump. It's not another self-paced library. It's a self-paced library with contact with me, right? With the designer, with the instructor. We have Betty Danowitz is going to be doing augmented reality here in a few weeks. So if you want to learn how to do augmented reality, you get to do assignments and build it with her. So
Yeah,
that's
and
what.
so I love this. Like, it's a performance support. You get to learn the concepts, but then you get to apply it, and then you get that. I find that feedback. In fact, I've been using video for feedback a lot lately, going through some design stuff. But I just find it so easy to help someone see and hear, kind of bring it together. Like, this is what you can do, and
Yeah,
they pick it up. Like, it's not like they typing feedback and getting misconstrued or misunderstood. It's like, oh, my arrow is pointing right to this thing. So
yeah,
I love that approach that you guys are taking. And, of course I'm a fan that I get to see these awesome videos that they're making. And I love that it's simple. Like, that's the thing I think that impressed me with the videos. You weren't trying to teach them all the most deep, hardcore features. You're teaching them, like, here's how you build a video in Camtasia.
right.
And I think that's really great, because so many people want to do the big thing. They want to do all the things. And really what
Yeah,
they need is, and I was talking to a group today about this, that we need a vocabulary and like a sentence, almost like a sentence structure for video, right? Like, we need to understand how to build out these blocks versus trying to
yeah,
just get cool things.
yeah, yeah. So it's basically, if we go, let's say we're doing stuff in Camtasia, which is great because I find Camtasia to be that in between step to the some of the big complex, very complex stuff, and then some of the stuff is like super basic, right? So you get to experience all these different things. It has, like, to me, it's like I always call it, I don't know if you ever heard me call it before, but I said it's like the Swiss Army knife for e-learning. So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I can kick out a video, I can do this, I can do that. So I use it a lot. I use it every day when I'm doing e-learning, because I incorporate video in e-learning a lot. And so people actually, can see what they're doing, and they can understand that overlay, or that user interface is pretty much familiar to any other product.
Mm-hmm.
Premiere Pro with some maybe changes, Logic, Pro Logic, whatever. It's the same thing. You're gonna have a timeline. You got some effects. You got this. You got that. The stage. Boom. You're going. So people get to build something. We're not sitting there going, well, the file menu has 15 different choices. You know, so it's like, you want to make something here, make it. And the cool thing was, recently Erica Simmer just did. She did. I asked them to do the first assignment. To do is a 1 minute composition, right? So 1 minute, put some stuff together and make the course, transitions, everything else. So she was marked because she did a video profile, right? And I said, well, you could do a video profile, you could do this, you could do that. She did a video profile, meaning I chose something to showcase herself in her portfolio. And that worked to put her in her portfolio. Now she put it in, she got over, at this point, I think it's like over 200 views.
Awesome.
And getting job offers. She
Oh,
hasn't even
cool.
finished anything.
Well,
So that's cool.
that's so awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
Alex, I know you've got a hard stop at 3. I want to make sure you have a little time to, get that breather between your next meeting and stuff. So thank you so much for spending time with me today, answering questions and talking about the need for us as professionals to take time to learn, and sharing some of those things that you've experienced and have learned about. It's super awesome. Really appreciate you coming on. If people want to check out the website, they want to get involved, maybe look at taking a course, elearninglaunch.com, correct?
Yeah, elearnlaunch.com, and also keep tabs closely. Follow our page on LinkedIn, because I'm going to make a big announcement pretty soon where there'll be probably about 20 people or so that can get to do things for free as
Awesome.
part of for next month a test. And we're also going to drop the rates because of COVID. So just keep tabs with that.
All right.
Sure.
Well, guys, go check them out, and they can follow. I know they can find you on LinkedIn, on Twitter.
Scholar, yep.
Always got lots of great stuff to say. Thank you once again. We'll let you go, but we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Matt. This has been a great experience.
Yeah, thank you. So everybody, make sure you check that out. E-learning launch is it's really cool. The outcomes I've seen from some of the classes, just watching on social media come through, are pretty cool. I do want to take just a minute. Barbara had asked a question about who do I follow. I love just finding really smart people like Alex out there in social media. There's tons of people on LinkedIn that I go and particularly like to listen to. I know there's Sam Rogers. Usually the way I find people, Tim Slade. I mean, I'm going to start listing a laundry list of names, but I like to go and find people that are making statements that are valuable and, not always the just clear, like, awesome cut. It might be not as cut and dried, or they might be a little controversial sometimes. So, I think it's so worth, so we've got, let's see, a million other people. I'm trying, it's like one of those things, you ask me a question, I can't think of who I follow.
Kara North?
Kara North is a good one. Alex is speaking in my ear. Got Kara North. We've got Clark Quinn is someone. You've got Trish Ewell. You got Shannon Tipton. Now I'm just going to go through the speaker circuit. What I'll do is I'll take some time. I'm going to see if I can write up some of this, Barbara. I think the key thing is go look for tags in like LinkedIn and look for like e-learning, and you'll see people that post a lot. Kara North is a really good one because she will point you to other people. So definitely check that out. But before we end today's episode, we've been trying to do these things a little bit more structured, a little bit more organized. And last week we introduced a new segment. We're going to keep this new segment rolling. So let's jump right into that. All right, so we're going to talk about what's new at TechSmith, and we've got a couple things we want to talk about this week that are new because we like to share the knowledge that we have out there, and hopefully it is something that is going to help you out to be more successful. So let me see if I can bring up the right one here. Oh, that's not the right one, but let's try this one. There we go. So we're focused on this week. We got on our blog post 9 simple hacks to write better knowledge-based articles. So not everything we do at TechSmith is about video. We actually talk about things like writing knowledge-based articles. Why? Because communication is so important. And this blog post just goes through some of the ideas that we have to help you write things that are going to be better, because sometimes people want to read, or sometimes you just want to have a list or an article that's going to help someone get through everything that they need to know. So that's one of the things we're talking about. The other thing is we've launched a new YouTube series, and we also put these on our blog. And this week's episode is about how to rotate video. Now, I've complained about vertical video before, but Andy, who is awesome, is going to walk you through the process with the video, and then we've got the blog post to back it up. Because sometimes you shoot it the wrong way, or your rotate lock was on, so it didn't get to be a horizontal view. But also, if you're going to things like Instagram, IGTV, or other places, sometimes vertical video can be good. So he gives some tips in the video that help make it look a little bit better as well. So check that out. And the last thing I'll bring up, of course, just because I love the TechSmith Academy, I put so much time and effort into it. If it will go there, yeah, this new screen recording basics course. It is 5 or 6 courses here, and it's about 30 videos. I know that sounds like a lot, but you can see like each course is 8 minutes, 15, 13. I've got a longer one, 18 and 17, and then 13. So they're not super long. It's about an hour's worth of content, maybe a little bit more, and it's going to walk you through those steps. Things like recording audio in your webcam, specifically for screencasting, things like that, recording your screen. It will walk through not only the steps, but also kind of that workflow that you want to consider. So definitely check those things out. You can find those, of course, in the TechSmith Academy with a ton of other great courses. We're so grateful for everyone that tunes in each week, your comments, your thoughts that, help us to make a better show, right? So if you've got comments or questions or thoughts, let me know. You can find me on social media. You can tag at TechSmith. our social media team will get those to me, or you can find me personally, Pierce MR, on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn, wherever you might find me. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, because we're going to do this every week. We are planning out guests and topics for the rest of the year and hopefully beyond. But we want to make sure we're covering things that are going to be valuable for you. So if there's someone you want to see, a question you want us to answer or dig deep into, let us know in the comments wherever you might be, whether you're watching this video or on social media, and we'd love to get back to you and see if we can make something happen. So let us know. And I guess just as we wrap up here, thanks again, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll be back next week. Another great, actually, no guest next week. We're going to be talking about basics of screen recording. If I point to the right direction, that we're going to be talking about that course and some of the things. We'll give some details and tips. And whether you're making how-to videos, technical documentation, or just trying to make better images and videos, don't forget, level up every single day. And thanks for watching.